Today on Rambling About Cars, say goodbye to 2022. We're just about at the end of the road. But before we go, Hyundai has news, Kia has news, Ram has news, and of course, we have to revisit some of the more memorable podcasts that we've done throughout this crazy year that has been 2022. So, without further ado, it is podcast time. I am Christopher Smith and Mr. Chris Bruce.
Yep.
Across the way, we got one more for 2022, man.
Yep. For anyone who's watching, who usually watches on YouTube, yes, I have a new background. I moved in the past week. Barely moved in the past week. So I've got a fresh background. I got the blur filter on for the moment because I got a whole bunch of stuff to do behind me, and I don't need the folks at home to see that. So yeah. For a little while now, you guys are gonna get the blur. But yeah, let's get into the show.
We've been busy, you and I, haven't we? I mean,
you moved in November, I moved in December. So
you did it much more efficiently because you were like, "Hey guys, I'm going to be out for a day," and I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm going to take 2 weeks off around Halloween."
Efficiently is an interesting. Stupidly is the better way to put it. I should have taken far more time off. Far more time off than I did, and it's still not great. So let's talk cars. Let's talk fun stuff and not moving.
Let's talk cars and fun stuff because we are right down at the end of the year. I hope everybody had a good Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you're celebrating. We're getting ready to come up to the 2023 new year. Usually things slow down in the auto world, and for the most part they have. But Hyundai, let's start with Hyundai because there is a new Kona that they debuted. Sort of. We know what it looks like on the outside, and it looks pretty good. We know what it looks like on the inside, but we don't really have much else. Am I correct on that, Bruce? Because you wrote this one up for us.
Well, we have no powertrain specs for any of them. We do have size specs, at least for the EV, and so I'll get into this real quick. So Hyundai Kona, we've seen spy shots. We know it's getting a new generation. We finally are getting to see it here. Unfortunately, Hyundai's photos that they provided to us are, let's say, not quite ideal. We get a really good look at the standard Kona, which is going to be the version with a combustion engine, or it'll be available with a hybrid powertrain. We don't know specs on either of those yet, but we know it'll be a hybrid and a standard combustion powertrain. There's going to be an EV. We have a decent look at that, especially I'm going to go back here. It is in the middle in this photo if you're watching on YouTube right now. So we got a decent look at that. And there's also going to be an N-line model. And unfortunately, the only image we have of that is kind of the front-ish of the fenders. They didn't really give us a good look at the N-line.
Now, do we think this was on purpose, or I mean, because this you're right. This really feels more like at least partially a teaser. Am I wrong there?
Yes and no. I think if you look at this image, you can tell that it has been cropped, and there clearly is the rest of a Kona and the rest of an N-line in that photo. And for whatever reason, Hyundai decided to crop the image, but they tell us what the N-line looks like in the press release. They say it has black roof, black mirror caps, slightly different front fascia. You can see all that. It has dual exhaust apparently, which we can't see, but they tell us that, so I'll believe them.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, if they're talking about it, let's see. I mean, you can get a taste of the black roof in there.
Yeah. So I think it was just, these were the photos that they decided to deliver. We asked for additional photos, especially of the N-line. They weren't available. Mm-hmm. So this is what we can see of the Kona. But like I said, in the press release, they do tell us a little bit more about it. It's interesting. In terms of dimensions, it's actually maybe not quite a bit bigger isn't the right word. Let me give you the numbers here. So the new Kona, and this is for the EV, they didn't give the specs for the other models, but you can tell just by looking at it, it's going to be fractions of an inch because, maybe a front fascia is a little bit thicker or rear bumper's a little thicker or whatever. But it's basically going to be these numbers. So the new Kona EV is 171.5 inches long, which is 5.9 inches longer overall than the existing Kona EV. And of that, the wheelbase is up 2.36 inches over the over the existing Kona EV. Width is up basically an inch, 0.98 inches. So call it an inch. So it's longer wheelbase and wider than the outgoing model, which I have to say, if you look at these photos, you can't really tell. Like if you just showed me these photos, I'd say, oh, so it's basically the same size as the current one. And no, not really. It's actually a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I mean, when you say those numbers like that, you think, oh, that doesn't sound like much. But in the automotive world, that actually translates to a fairly sizable difference.
Well, yeah, because
Um,
think about it, 3 inches in wheelbase means 3 more inches you can appropriate between the folks who are sitting in the back and the people in the front.
mhm.
An inch wider, maybe the door panel or something like that. Maybe that's a little thicker. We don't know, but that could mean a little bit more shoulder room, a little bit more room to spread out. Like, it. We're talking fractions of an inch, but it matters. Like you've been in cars before. I know I have, where they just you feel tight in them, and you can be in a car that's just a little bit bigger, but because of better packaging, different sizing, things like that, where they feel much more spacious, even though you're talking about a couple inches in any certain direction.
Right. No, it makes a big difference. But let's talk a little bit about the styling
Okay.
because I mean that's what people will notice more than anything. And I think, I mean, it's a Kona, it's recognizable as a Kona, and maybe it's a bit cliche to say to label something as a futuristic kind of design, especially in 2022, but it kind of has a futuristic design on the front, don't you think? I mean, with just the thin running, the LED strip compared to the outgoing model. I mean, it's
Yeah, that's certainly futuristic. I think what I would say is that I don't know this, but I would be shocked if the person that designed the Ioniq 5 didn't have a strong hand in designing this. Because you look at it, especially that big vertical diagonal crease on the side that we're looking at here, if you
Mhm,
can see it on the right, it has a lot of Ioniq 5 cues, just in a bigger, kind of more
mhm,
rugged looking shape. Um, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of people like the Ioniq 5. So I
mhm.
can see why you would adapt that shape to a larger vehicle. And you're right, it's still Kona. You can still see cues from the Kona in there. In fact, as we're going through YouTube, you're going to see the current gen Kona, and there are similarities. But to me, it just kind of looks like there's a lot of Ioniq 5 in this shape to me.
No, I can certainly see that as well, and it comes back to what we've been saying, or at least what I've been saying for a while. It feels like Hyundai is just kind of hitting all the right spots right now for automotive design. I think the
Yeah.
Kona, I mean, I think the Kona is a really good looking small crossover. I didn't think it was bad before,
No, I
and
didn't think it
this
was bad, but
one,
this is way better even.
yeah, it just,
um,
I mean, like I said, I hate to use the term futuristic, but you just have that single LED running lamp that just runs all the way across the hood, unbroken, and then the regular headlights are underneath that.
mhm.
Um, it's a it's a very it's a very smooth look in an age where we're seeing a lot of like massive grills and contrasting angles. You still have
Yes.
some of that here, but it feels like it's very toned down and thought out and
Mhm.
not over designed just for the sake of being over designed.
Totally, I agree. I do want to mention the inside real quick. So inside, it will be available with a pair of 12.3-inch screens, and they're doing kind of the thing we're seeing a lot of automakers do, where they share a single bezel around them. So it looks like one giant screen, but it's actually two 12.3-inch screens. And then I want to point this out because I had to reach out to Hyundai and they had to check with people. But let me stop on an image and see if I can zoom in and show you. It's going to be tough. Let's see if this zooms in okay. So there's a dial. I don't know if you can see it there. I'm going to, whoops, freaking
Yeah,
thing.
I see what you're talking about there.
On the bottom of the center console, and there was no mention of what it did in the press release, So I had to reach out and find out, and that is apparently the drive mode controller.
Okay.
So don't know how many drive modes it has, but apparently it must have two because that's how you control them. It
Interesting.
must have at least two, I should say.
Interesting. And of course, like you said, we don't have any specs on powertrain.
Nope.
We don't have any information on pricing or
Nope.
when it's going to
Nope.
go on sale yet. So yeah, I mean, we've seen it from Hyundai before, where they do like an exterior reveal and then a few weeks later an interior reveal.
Yeah, I think last year
So,
one of us wrote, Motor One, we have our annual Festivus airing of grievances, and
which
we
you can
talked about
go to
auto.
motor1.com right now and check out.
We will have our new one up by the time this episode goes live.
Yeah.
But what someone wrote, it might have been you, it could have been that
I think it was
being
me.
tired of automakers doing a styling release and then a powertrain release and then stuff like that, and Hyundai
you got a car,
really
you're proud. Tell us about the damn thing.
Right.
Don't drag it out for 2 months.
And so we know the
I'll go buy a
styling, we
Subaru
know
in the
the size, and for now that's all we know.
Okay.
Oh, I wanted to mention one other thing. So we got a bunch of comments about this car. I think we had 15 comments to the story, and a lot of the comments were asking about a Kona N model, not N line. And there was no mention of an N, but as people put in the comments, we also can't rule out, down the line there being a full fat N model, but at least at introduction, at least, Hyundai is basically saying there's going to be the four variants. There's going to be combustion powered, hybrid, electric, and N line. And maybe down the line we'll get a new Kona N or something like that. But at least for right now, those are the four that they're talking about.
So in other words, stay tuned. We'll see what's coming soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on. We have let's go from small to large.
Okay.
Because there is a new Ram TRX trim that Ram just dropped. It's called the Ram TRX Havoc, and it's yellow. Moving on to the next story. No, we'll talk a little bit more because there is a little bit more, not much. I mean, it's another special edition Ram TRX. They call it Havoc. It gets a special Baja yellow exterior paint with black decals. There's more black with the 18-inch beadlock capable wheels. Inside, there's Prowler yellow stitching for the interior. And I don't know for sure. This is just my speculation. I'm wondering if they pulled that from like the old Plymouth Prowler back in the late 90s, because if I remember correctly, there was a very prominent shade of yellow you could get on the Prowler. So just pure speculation there, but Prowler yellow stitching inside, carbon fiber accents and branding inside to tell you this is a Havoc. It's also $106,445.
It's a pricey pickup.
It is. I mean, TRX pricing has crept up through the years, over time since it's come out. It's important to note that at this price point, it does include a lot of equipment that would otherwise be optional. It's got the TRX Level 2 equipment group. That alone is like an $11,000 add-on if you were to just get the regular TRX. And that adds the big 19-speaker stereo system, head-up display, surround view cameras, leather, ventilated seats. So, I mean, it's a well-equipped truck, but I mean, the pricing has gone up, as it has pretty much with every vehicle out there. I think if you jump into the configurator right now for a new Ram TRX and max it all out, you're talking like 112,000. So it's definitely a pricey truck, but I mean, you still get the Hellcat motor in there, 702 horsepower. None of that has changed. But this is sort of Ram's formula, right? They take their truck, they add a little bit of, they give it a special color, they add some graphics. They do. I won't say they phone it in because there is effort here, but they do just something a little different to keep it fresh. And they do it regularly enough where it's like, okay, eventually we're going to get the interest of this group and this group and this group. And they're keeping it fresh. There's only supposed to be Well, we don't know how many there's supposed to be. They just say very limited quantities, but there are no production numbers yet.
Mm.
And that just, I mean, that just dropped here. I mean, nobody was expecting it. It dropped right at the end of the year. Just a neat little TRX thing to make you smile for the holidays. For those who like big trucks with big supercharged V8s that can jump sand dunes.
So
I,
let me
I
ask.
I'm sounding a little negative there, but I do think it's a cool truck.
So
I'm not going to pay 100 grand for any pickup truck, but I mean, this is a cool truck.
I look at this and I look at the yellow and black color scheme, and to me, should they have called this the Super B? Like
No,
the
no,
no? Okay, I
no.
tried.
No, I see where you're going. But I mean,
That's a
I
Dodge
mean
thing, and they shouldn't cross
that's
the
it's a
stream.
Dodge thing. It's a Dodge thing. It's a
Okay,
car thing.
okay.
Um, I'm trying to remember. Oh, was there like before Ram split from Dodge? Was there a Dodge Ram Super B at one point?
Wasn't
I want to say I mean I thought there was a Super B before with Dodge. Maybe it wasn't Ram, maybe it was like a I'm pretty sure there was a Charger at one point. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But for some reason I'm getting this image of like the Dodge Ram with the really humongous grill. We're talking like mid 2000s or so somewhere.
so.
Mid or late 2000s.
There was called the Rumblebee, and
The Rumblebee. Okay.
I need to find some place where we can use images safely because when you search
Well,
Google search
thank you.
something.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce, super co-host who's working Google to the nth degree to try to make me not sound as dumb as I am. So I
Well, no,
appreciate that
I'm
very
going
much.
on
Rumblebee. Okay. It's nice to know
Wheels
that
Age right now, and I will get us a proper
it's it's nice to know
image.
that I haven't gone completely senile yet.
Oh,
That's very comforting. I mean, if you can't find any images, we don't necessarily need images. But for the listeners out there, if you remember the Rumblebee, send us an email, podcast@motor1.com, and say,
yeah, it
Smith, you
definitely
dummy,
exists.
that was the coolest truck ever. But
I
hey,
just can't find an
how many
image I
Ram
feel
special
comfortable using.
editions? How many Dodge special editions? Um, it's a formula. Like I said, it's a formula that works because it seems like they they wouldn't be doing it if they weren't selling vehicles, right?
Of course, yeah.
So props to Ram. I'm not a yellow person per se,
Hmm.
but I kind of dig it on this truck. Yellow with the black.
Yeah, yellow and black's that's why I thought the
It's
B
always a good
moniker of some
combo,
kind, would work for it.
right?
But
I mean, it's well, it's not always a good combo. But on this application, it works. So $106,445. That does include a $1,895 destination fee. I think those destination fees are getting up there. So
they're
um,
really getting up there.
a bit pricey. But let's move on to one more um, kind of a surprise here. In some
Well,
ways,
kind of a
not a
surprise, kind of not a
surprise
surprise.
in other ways. So fans of the Kia Stinger, we have some good news and some bad news. Good news, there is a new special edition. Bad news is called the Tribute Edition because Kia has finally officially acknowledged that the Stinger is ending production. And this
Right,
Tribute Edition is designed to mark the end of the Kia Stinger production run. It's available in a special shade, Moonscape matte gray, or you can get it in Ascot green. It has black 19-inch wheels, black mirror caps, black Brembo brake calipers. So you kind of get that gray with the black sort of the dark out package. It's got a terracotta leather interior. There's a numbered plaque in there that reminds you, hey, this is a special Kia Stinger. You get a wasp emblem embroidered in the headrest, and I think that's kind of cool.
that's a nice touch.
Stinger, wasp. We don't have any information on pricing or when it's going to be available.
Right.
We
Well,
do
yeah, that's
know
the thing. We don't officially know this is going to come to the U.S., right? They
we
haven't
don't officially know it's
said.
going to come to the US yet, right?
or any of the 1,000 examples are going to be available here. To my knowledge, the Stinger has the U.S. has been one of the more successful markets for the
Right.
Stinger, so I guess I would be surprised,
Right.
but we don't know
Again,
for certain yet.
yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Bruce. We don't know for certain exactly where it's going to be, but we do know they are building 1,000 of them, and that's
Right.
it. And unofficially, it's pretty much a given that the EV6 GT will fill the role that the Stinger holds right now. So no next generation Kia Stinger. It is finally official. Of course, the rumors have been going for what, close to a year now, or if not more.
At least a year. Yeah.
The sales haven't been spectacular. If I remember the last time I was looking at the sales numbers, but you are talking about a full on GT with the twin turbo V6, all wheel drive. If that's like a $55,000 car, so it's not something you normally associate with Kia, with something with a little bit more affordability, but you still get tons of performance at that price when you look at the competition.
Right. That's the thing you know,
Yeah.
that 55, 60, that's not an inexpensive car, but you got a lot for your money with the Stinger. And I just popped this
Yep.
story up for anyone looking on YouTube that at least in the UK, the Kia representatives there, they are saying that the EV6 GT is at least the kind of the spiritual successor to
Mhm.
the Stinger. So yeah.
And
Um,
it makes sense. All wheel drive, a fair amount of space in the back. That's one thing I always liked about the Stinger. Um, it it's a great performance vehicle, very exciting, very thrilling to drive, but it's also insanely practical with its rear hatch and its cargo space in the back. It's that's a car that I think just a few years down the road, if not already to some degree, there's going to be really focused, hardcore, dedicated following. That'll want to grab that car and just hold
mhm,
on to it. Sort of like I did with the Mazda 6 with the 5-door. I
mhm.
met a few other 5-door people that were like, yeah, I didn't want any other six than this one, just because this is the design. It's fun to drive, insanely practical. So pouring one out for the Kia Stinger.
They, like you said, they are really cool cars. I do, and I completely agree with you. I think that it's going to be, one of those cars that becomes collectible pretty much immediately once they hit the used market. That there are enthusiasts out there that want a four-door sedan. You can put the family in it. Like you said, there's plenty of cargo room for a family, but it's also just super fast and super fun too. So,
Yep, and with all-wheel drive,
yep.
it's a good all-season, all-weather, all-location car. And used prices haven't really been dropping. Obviously, car prices,
Right. In
well,
general, are
used car
high.
prices in general have been falling over recent months, but they're still up quite a bit from what they used to be.
Sure.
And the used Stingers that I've looked at, and I have looked at them,
Oh, have you?
they're still bringing a pretty hefty price. I
Okay.
was kind of hoping, well, maybe the depreciation would hit and people wouldn't want them, and
Hmm.
after 3 or 4 years, okay, now you can go get one of the $50,000 GTs for like 20 grand. And no, they're still
Not
staying up
yet.
around 30.
No.
They're still staying up about 30, 35.
Yeah, that sounds all right to me.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah,
Well,
what do you think, folks? Are you happy or sad about the Kia Stinger finally going away? Are you happy or sad about a $106,000 Ram TRX that's yellow?
yeah,
Should it have been called the Ram TRX Rumblebee?
I kind of think it should have been, but
That
oh
that
well.
that might have been a good idea, Bruce. That might have been a good idea. What do you think of the new Hyundai Kona? Is it really futuristic? Let us know. Podcast at motor1.com. It might be sort of that weird space between Christmas and New Year,
It
but we're
is.
still paying attention. That means we're still working because, hey, we love what we do. We love talking cars.
We do.
Podcast at motor1.com. You can always, always, always watch our podcast on YouTube. Motor One Podcasts is the channel. We're on Spotify, Apple, Google for the fans that just enjoy listening and streaming. We always try to do our best to describe what we're looking at.
Of course. Because if you're on the road, I know, Ted Adam Green, a frequent commenter, he and his daughter, they listen when they're on the road. And so, people are on the road. So we want to paint a verbal picture for them. And then other folks, you're at home, it's a Friday night, maybe you got a beverage in your hand, and you throw on Rambling About Cars to get the weekend started. So
We
I
are
want to
a
cater to both groups.
we are a very, very good automotive podcast to listen when you're on the road. And you know what? New Year's Eve is coming up,
It is.
and rambling about cars would make a great drinking game.
Would it now?
It would make a great drinking game. Every time I say, "What do you think? What do you think?" Take a drink, take a drink.
I don't think people would get too inebriated. It's only a couple times an episode, but
It
maybe
feels like
I
a
never
lot
kept
more.
count though either. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
not what I'm thinking about.
it feels like a lot. But
Okay,
or hey, just put us on, listen while you're relaxing, watching the ball
exactly.
drop. We hope you're having a great new year wherever that's taking place.
Mhm.
At this point, because I mean, last year our end of the year show was just a little bit different where we were just kind of kicking back, relaxing a little bit more than we already relax.
Mhm.
And we're gonna do something similar right now, aren't we, Bruce?
Yeah. So we want to talk. So it's the new year, or technically not quite the new year. It's about to be the new year as this
Almost.
episode comes out. So we're gonna take a look back. I pulled up my 5 favorite episodes from the past year. Smith, I don't know how many you pulled up. I think we're just gonna go round robin until we feel like we've kind of gotten our favorites out. Um,
Was
yeah,
I
just
was I supposed to pull them up?
you don't have to. I
I
did,
have a
but
I have a list. No, I should do that. I should do that. I have a
no.
list. I
Okay,
have a
list
list
is
of
fine too.
episodes.
Um,
Well, why don't you go first?
absolutely. So my list is, I would say, roughly sorted by my favorites. First one I'm going to bring up is totally my favorite one of this year. And Smith, I'm sorry you were not on this episode. It was, uh, maybe I should be embarrassed by this. I don't know. I'm not embarrassed by it, so screw it. The one I do with
You
my
should
dad is my favorite
you,
episode of the year.
you
Um,
absolutely should not be embarrassed. You two talking, I mean,
like,
that's one. It's great car content. Whether you're father son or not, that's great car content because you both love cars to the nth
yeah,
degree.
I
You
like
have
car.
great
He
stories
is the
that you're
reason I like
swapping
cars. I
around.
wouldn't be talking here or writing about cars without
Right.
him. So yeah. So yeah, we I pulled up the link to it here. We started out. We talked a little bit about the Charger Daytona SRT because it had just debuted in the striker red color, and like we said during the episode, that red color really just made the car pop. You could really see kind of the design details and how curvaceous the front is, and how that nose kind of dips down, but then there's the kind of pseudo flying buttress. I don't even know, like a front wing almost. I don't know what the hell you'd call that design element, but that goes across the nose. So we talked about that a little bit, and then we just both talked about kind of our favorite car stories. So like he talked about scaring my grandmother in his Red Runner, and we talked about going in the Nurburgring and just stuff like that was my favorite episode of the year. It's definitely one, and I've said this since then. It's one I'll cherish in general, just because. And I'm gonna recommend this to anyone out there who has the opportunity to do it: is do an oral history with your family if you can, especially around the holidays is a perfect time. And it doesn't
Yep.
have to be a like a structured thing. It can be as simple as take your phone out, press record on it, on the voicemail function or voice memo function, put it on the table, and just ask a question of what was your favorite car? What was your favorite holiday memory? What was your, whatever it is that you want it to be. And if you're like my family, it's going to end up going into one story, into another story, into another story, and you're going to have all of this information, and you can just save that, and it's just yours, and you know that's knowledge that isn't going to be out there in the world unless your family is like a celebrity or someone they're going to write a biography about or something like that. It like those memories are going to be gone when they're gone. You get to keep them on something. So I'm a big proponent of oral histories, and so yeah, that's why I really like doing this one.
That is, I'm so glad that you brought that up, that you mentioned it. I thoroughly enjoyed being a pure listener for that one. And I think it was a very different experience for me because I enjoyed it so much. I want to know, is there a story that the two of you wanted to share, but you weren't able to work it in?
Yeah. There was a story. My mother has a story about almost driving a Jeep into a lake because the brakes went. So it was a boat ramp, like you're supposed to dock a boat, and she was with her siblings, and she was driving a Jeep, and the brakes went out as she was going down the boat ramp. And I will stop the story there because I actually will have her on at some point to tell that story. So yeah, there are other family car stories that I have been told over the years that I would love to share.
That's great. Well, you know what that means. Sequel
Yeah, totally.
coming
Yes.
coming sometime in 2023.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
let me start off here with an episode. I'm going to assume, well, no, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't assume. It might be one of yours as well. I'm going to jump back to April 1st. Do you remember what we were doing on April 1st?
Let me look.
We did something a little special. We said we're going to do something a little bit different.
This is where we had Alanis and we had Seth.
Yes,
obviously.
episode 65. If you haven't listened to this episode yet, episode 65, it was our April 1st video for 2022. We didn't want to do, well, we talked about maybe trying to do some sort of April Fool's thing, and instead we decided, no, let's commemorate this day of pranks with just not a prank, but something completely different. I guess
completely different format. Yeah.
But we invited a bunch of guests. We had editor-in-chief, Motor One, Seth Mearsma. We had former editor-in-chief and now just kind of roving, living the van life editor, John Neff.
Talking about his RV experience with the band 98 Degrees and playing Mario Kart with Nick Lachey.
RV, the episode title is Jumping Subarus, which is what Seth was talking about. Weird Race Cars, which is what our other guest, John Fry, was on.
Yep.
And of course, John was with us earlier in the year. Amazing, talented designer and automotive artist. Yeah, he was on Weird Race Cars, RVing with Rock Stars. And then, Alanis King was on. Of course, she has her Rich Energy book that she's a co-author on. And I mean, she was sharing all kinds of crazy stories as well. It was just like an hour and 20 minutes of just some of the most good-natured, hilarious, fun swapping stories, like, hey, can you believe we do this stuff for a living, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it was just a thoroughly enjoyable discussion. Everything from driving down the Isle of Man to I'm trying to think of what some of the stories that John was talking about.
Well, John showed those bizarre Argentinian race cars that I'd never seen before. It was some series from Argentina from, I want to say early 80s, late 70s.
I mean, he totally got us. I had
never heard of that stuff. But yeah, the designs were wild. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just a great episode. Alanis talking about just, I remember now she was talking about it was a certain drive event that she was on that was just
where a professional driver who she told us who it was off mic, so I won't mention who it was, but who was kind of condescending to her. So
just a little bit, but I mean,
we should do that again. Maybe that's April 1st this year too. We get some people together and just do that again because that was really fun.
Just, hey, okay, what are the fun stories that you just want to talk about?
Yeah,
I think that's a tradition. I think we just established that April 1st tradition.
Yeah, totally.
Sounds very good. Okay, hit me up with one of yours.
Yep. So this one is a incredibly recent memory. This is having Myron and Mark on to talk about A Quiet Greatness, their book.
Yes.
I could have
extremely recent, like last week.
Yeah, I could have talked to those guys for another hour easily about Japanese cars. They are both so knowledgeable and just be just so fun that it's a great book, but also they're just fantastic guests, and I love talking to them about cars because they own bizarre, interesting cars. They've had experience with bizarre, interesting cars, and they're just great guests. So, um, yeah, just one of my favorites. I would I would love to have them back on, to talk about whatever. Just a super fun episode to me. I always like when we get to have Smith. You're fantastic to talk to, but it's always interesting when we have a guest on that with like kind of a different point of view and a different perspective and different knowledge in different places, and always fun stuff.
Well, after that discussion, after that interview, and I again, that was one for me that could have gone on for another hour and a half. Because especially, they started kind of veering off a little bit. Well, maybe we should write a book about Japanese engines. It's like,
Right.
yes, write a book about Japanese engines. Not to take away from any of the exotic Italian brands, but you can build an engine that requires all kinds of intricate maintenance at certain intervals to make power. Or you can build an engine that just goes together and stays together no matter what the heck you do to it. And I feel like that's I mean, that's a very interesting approach, right?
And I was actually the opposite because they also brought up doing a book about concepts because
Yep.
they didn't really bring up concepts in their book. And I would love to see that book. Not the engine book would be cool too, but I would just love to see them kind of, because they already have this knowledge of Japanese cars and they already know about a lot of these concepts anyway, of just like showing them to a wider audience, because there's some incredibly cool, incredibly weird, wacky, fun, awesome, just everything concepts out there of Japanese cars that I would love to see them do that as well. So,
and I learned
yeah.
a lesson there too that I will never forget. For decades, I've called this certain wedge Japanese car the Dome Zero, right? No, it's Dome. How did I ever think? How did I not pick that up before? Dome. So that's there you go. It wouldn't be a rambling about cars episode if I didn't mispronounce something. that was the point there. Dome. I will never forget that. And I can't wait to talk to them again. And I'm sure we'll have them back at some point here.
I wanted to hear about Mark's Bonneville Salt Flat. What, 750, 850 cc that he's building? I forget which one. But yeah, trying to take. I think he already has or had the record. I forget if it had been taken from him, but to beat his old record to go even faster on a sub-liter car would be.
And Bonneville is such a cool place. I mean, not just because of its history. I mean, people think, oh, you're just going fast in a straight line. No, that's a loose surface.
Yeah.
It can be, I mean, you don't just go out and floor it. You have to roll slowly. You have to get up to speed. It's exciting and thrilling in its own right. And I mean, you could go out there and set a speed record at 100 miles an hour in the right vehicle and have it just feel amazing, right? It doesn't have to be something outstanding or outlandish. I would love to hear more about that.
Totally. So your turn.
My turn. Well, I'll jump us back to let's see, when was this episode? July 15th. It's episode number 80.
Okay.
And it's when we were talking about 80s and 90s cars with Brad Hansen.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah.
That was, I mean,
almost made my list. Yeah. That would be my number 6.
I mean, anytime I get a chance to talk about this era, and people are like, oh, it was the worst, the 80s and the 70s, they had the worst cars. I mean, from a standpoint, from a perspective of power, yeah, absolutely. From a perspective of evolution and technology, I think it's the most fascinating 2 decades of them all. And I hold the 1980s above everything else because you're watching evolution in action. You're seeing how automakers are striving to move forward, making more advanced vehicles that have more power, that offer more efficiency, that are cleaner running. When you are forced to work with constraints like that, that's where the genius happens. And we wouldn't have 800 horsepower production street cars today if it wasn't for the mandates that came down that forced automakers to think outside the box in the 70s and the 80s. And I love vehicles of the 80s just because a lot of them were trying to envision the future instead of living in the now, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yep.
It's like, okay, we can build a car for now, but how about a car that talks to you when you open the door, like that, like some of the Chryslers had. How
And
about
the
a
Nissan.
car with the completely digital dash, which, okay, now we're getting touch screens. Cars with more switches than fighter planes, because fighter jets, I mean, that's the cool stuff. So anytime I get a chance to talk about things from that era, I am just completely in heaven.
Agreed.
And being able to meet Brad and just to have that Discord back and forth. I mean, I got him on Facebook now. We're pinging each other every now and again. I was
We need
actually
to get
talking
him
to
back
Brad.
on as a guest as well.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Bruce, because I was talking with him a little bit last week. Hey, when you want to be back on the show? He's like, anytime. Let's try to set something up in January or February. So
He's welcome.
Mr. Brad Hansen gonna come back just in a matter of weeks as you're listening to this. You can expect more Radwood love. Now that I have the 95 show with the 95 Mustang, all I got to do is get the show running and fix the Mustang. Okay, I got a little bit more work to do, but then I'm going to Radwood, baby.
Cool.
All right. What you got for me?
So this was also a guest, but this was a Motor One affiliated guest. This was our episode from July 1st, 2022. This is Experiencing the Goodwood Festival of Speed with Jeff Perez. And Jeff, was this on your list?
No, it wasn't, but I'm laughing because of the thing that I remember most from that podcast.
Was it him taking the helicopter into the parking lot and us asking, did you see anything cool in the parking lot? Well, I kind of took a helicopter so I didn't really see anything.
I wasn't with all the, just all the normal people in the parking lot. I was in the helicopter. Yeah. No, that was hilarious and awesome. And I mean, Jeff, few people have the car knowledge that Jeff has. So, I mean, to get his experience sort of behind the scenes from Goodwood. Yeah. Thoroughly enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it was just really cool to get that behind the scenes experience. And, even going there as a normal person is cool, but then going there in a helicopter. I know you met Travis Pastrana, and we're looking at the family huckster here, which just in the certainly the past month, but maybe it was the past 2 weeks, depending on when this goes up. The new Gymkhana video came out with Pastrana driving this wild Subaru. Jeff got to take a really close look at it. Am I mistaken? It's been a few months now. He was supposed to ride with Pastrana, but they wrecked the car or blew up the car he was going to go in. Something like that happened, right?
Yes, right. Something, and I don't remember the exact details either, but there was some sort of special media drive set up that he was going to go on. And yeah, the car got a little beat up and he wasn't able to do that, which I've had the opportunity to do some rally ride-alongs. And I mean, I wasn't even in something, super duper, off the wall, like a WRC car or anything. It was with Toyota's rally team, the Rally RAV4, that they were doing. That was one of the first things I did with Motor One back in 2016, I think.
Oh wow!
When I was still living my other life as a marketing manager, I went out to California to do a Toyota event with their rally team for Rally America and the Rally RAV4, which was basically a factory stock RAV4 with just a few safety tweaks that they were out rallying. So yeah, that's anytime if you have an opportunity to do that, take it, because you think, oh, I got skill. And then you sit shotgun with a rally driver that does have skill. And it's like, okay, I've got a lot to learn.
Right. Okay. You're up.
I am up. Okay. Well, I'm going to jump to one where actually We didn't have any guests at all, but it was just a great podcast with some very interesting vehicles to talk about. I'm jumping us to episode 96,
No, that's the one
where
with me and my dad.
oh, sorry, okay. You use the same the same image. There was okay, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Here, I'll
Um
go. I'll talk about
sorry,
mine. Well,
yeah, go ahead for your next one. I
no
meant
problem.
episode 85 where we're talking about the Charger Daytona SRT.
Okay, yeah, because it debuted in images and then it debuted at SEMA, and so we had SEMA images, so that's why.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Well, jump in with your next one here. Let me get mine pulled up here.
Okay, so mine is. Let me pull this up. This is where we talked to Ted Ryan about the Ford Heritage Vault. I actually forgot. I went back and looked at this. This is from June 17th. I could have sworn we did the whole thing with Ted, but no. Ted Ryan. But apparently it was only half the episode. The other part we were talking modern supercars with Seth and Brett.
Yep.
But yeah, Ted is a super knowledgeable guy and just a fun guy. And also the Ford Heritage Vault is super, super cool. For anyone out there, they just updated it within the past 3 weeks or so to add the Ford of England stuff. I know Top Gear, their website covered it, and they got the Heritage Vault got a ton of traffic from that. So if you're into English Fords in addition to American Fords, you can now go there, and they've added all that stuff now. So if you're a fan of Ford Capris or Talnuses or Anglias or probably a bunch of I don't even know exist, you can go check those out there as well. So it's just a really cool, valuable archive because they have not only brochures, they have images. They just if you're a Ford fan and now not even a fan of American Fords, but also European Fords, you can just geek out there and spend a whole afternoon or a whole day just finding all sorts of cool stuff. So highly recommend that. Good episode and just also a really cool resource.
And that was another one where I really wanted to be on the episode because I'm all about that stuff. But I was very, very glad I could enjoy it as a listener and just not have to think about, okay, pay super close attention and ask some interesting questions, but just sit back and listen and absorb it all. And yeah, I mean, I went on the site and started looking around just on my own after listening to the podcast. And it's a phenomenal archive. It's a phenomenal archive. And I say that from a perspective of a journalist who occasionally we might have articles that we're trying to write on older vehicles. And it's always a shame.
In the past 2 months.
Yeah, it's a shame. A lot of automakers that they might have like a small archive or they might hold on to some things, but if you go back much more than 3 or 4 years and press kits, photos, things like that just don't really exist.
Right.
So for Ford to invest all of this time, and obviously it's not just for journalists, it's for
anybody.
Everybody. It's for enthusiasts. It's for journalists. It's for anybody that's doing anything related to cars to have that kind of knowledge base on hand. Yeah. Just phenomenal. All right. Now the episode that I meant to share, episode 85, my mistake, everybody. And that was back on, let's see, episode 85,
August 11th, it looks like.
August 19th, I think, was the episode. And that's where we first saw the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT EV. We also Dodge was debuting a lot of things that week. And we didn't have any special guest here, I don't believe. Or did we have Brandon Turkis on?
We might have had Brandon. Did whoever whichever
I don't think we did, because I think he was still trying to recover from attending like all of these events like 3 or 4 days in a row, because Dodge they were doing their speed week, and they started with just kind of their new Charger and Challenger special editions, and then they transitioned to their hybrid Dodge Hornet, And then they capped it off with the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT, their fully electric, next gen concept.
Mhm.
So I mean, we were able to talk about those vehicles, and I found the Charger Daytona SRT EV just particularly interesting on its own. Uh, I also found the Hornet to be pretty interesting as well. Um,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, it's an Alfa Romeo, but the way Dodge, the way they were trying to pull on heartstrings of like the turbo Dodge guys from the
Mhm.
80s. It always comes back to the 80s for me. How does that happen? Like talking about like the Omni GLH kind of pulling on those turbo Omni,
Yep.
or not, or yeah, the turbo
Yeah,
Omni heartstrings. Um, I'm kind of into the Dodge Hornet now. The plug-in hybrid has some oomph to it.
it does.
Um, but we also in this episode, Bruce, if you recall, we talked about the Porsche 911 GT3 RS.
We did.
And
I remember that.
when I mean it's rare where we have a podcast that sort of comes together that way, where we're really kind of in many ways talking about the end of an era, the transition, and the beginning of a new era, right?
Mhm.
And that's what we have here. You have the Porsche 911 GT3 RS, no turbo, no electricity, just a plain old combustion engine spinning to the moon.
Yep.
And it's a fantastic vehicle in its own right. And then you have the Dodge Hornet fusing that plug-in hybrid system, offering a good balance of power in a small package and doing it at a fairly affordable price. And then you have like the next generation of insane power with the Charger Daytona SRT EV. I just remember that episode as just being very, very fulfilling on multiple levels.
Yeah. No, that was a fun one. It's always interesting to talk about because we are living in that point where that transition is happening, where EVs are clearly the future, but they have not taken over yet. So you
Right.
have a vehicle like the GT3 RS, and we know a 911 hybrid is coming within the next couple of years. We might even see it in
Mhm.
2023. That's we can't even rule that out. So, the 911's getting electrified soon, and they say a fully electric one could happen in 2030. So the writing's kind of on the wall that a
Mhm.
purely combustion powered 911, it's probably got more days behind it than it has coming up for it. So it's an interesting time.
And again, that was episode 85 back on August 19th. I totally recommend going back and revisiting all of the episodes that we're talking about here. Go back and revisit the whole thing going back 2 years.
Listen
We
to every
have,
episode.
yeah,
Just
listen to
load us
listen to
up.
every episode.
Yeah.
Every episode. Well, let's see. My favorite episode starts with episode 1 in 2021. Well, here, since you did 2 in a row, let me jump on to my next one here really
Okay.
quick. This is probably one that you're going to be like, oh, well, yeah, of course. This is back when we did our Knight Rider historians interview with AJ Palmgren.
Yep.
Of course, you have Joe and AJ. They are the Knight Rider historians. And again, how does it always come back to the 80s with me? I don't know. It's strange, but I mean, Knight Rider has such a following after all of these years, and these two guys are just, I've never met anybody so not just enthusiastic, but just like dedicated
Hmm.
and professional about it, right? Where I mean, I jokingly said, if you lost your TV remote control 15 years ago, they could find it, right?
Well,
And
for
AJ
me,
was like, well, no, no, no. If you lost a Knight Rider TV remote control 15 years ago, we could find it. I mean, it's just their knowledge base is incredible. And what's really special about them and Knight Rider historians, they recognize, and two, they have the ability to be able to have some of the original screen used equipment. They have a couple
Mhm.
screen used kits, Transams, that were used on the show. They managed to track down the original screen used semi truck. They tracked down the screen used semi trailer, and they're fortunate enough to be able to be the caretakers of these things and restore them. But what's really special is that they recognize just how huge a fan base exists.
Mhm.
how many passionate people there are about Knight Rider, about this kind of campy 80s TV show that had this just amazing car that did amazing things. So they're taking all of these fans along with them for the journey. They're posting regular videos about restoration projects on the truck and the trailer. They're posting videos about things they're doing with the car, things they found, places they're going. It's inspiring to see, and it was an inspiring episode for me to be able to talk to AJ and just get a sense of that passion firsthand. There are a lot of enthusiasts out there. There are a lot of car enthusiasts that are excited about certain brands, certain models. I'm not sure I've ever seen anybody so dedicated and also so professional as Joe and AJ. And it was just a pleasure to have him on. I totally hope to have him on again.
One thing that strikes me is while they call themselves Knight Rider historians, Knight Rider archaeologists would be just as appropriate
It
because you
would.
watch their videos and they go layer by layer. And I'm thinking of like the video with the trailer where they like take a single layer off and they're like, oh my God, we found this little piece that shows that it was used on the show, and then
Yep.
they just slowly go layer by layer through these vehicles, and it shows that it's not only their level of passion for them, they put that passion out to the people that watch their content, and that's really special because you can it's a hard kind of rope to go across because you can be really passionate about something but not necessarily present that very well to the outside world,
Right.
or vice versa, but they
Right.
just nail it. And so yeah,
I mean, everybody out there that's working on a project car, something that you're excited about. I mean, take that excitement, but now decide that you're going to take the time to set up video equipment and
right.
videotape some of the most mundane things you could think of. Hey,
And
I'm
then
going to take this. I'm going to take the
edit it,
seats out of my
and
Corvette today.
yeah,
And okay, big deal. You're taking seats out of a car, but that's what they're doing. So you're going along with them on the restoration. Obviously, this isn't just another vehicle. I mean, these vehicles have Hollywood prominence. They're special, but yeah, that's what makes it so endearing to me. It was a pleasure. I want to have them both back on the show. I want to see them both just kind of just rapid fire doing all
totally.
kinds of kits. All right, Bruce, how many was that?
That's
Is that
4. I
is
got
that
one
4?
left.
So one more. Okay,
I got
go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, fire up your one. I've got one more. Actually, I think I've got a couple more, but I'll pick one here.
Okay. I did top 5. If if
Yep.
there's one more you really want to do, go for it. But okay. My last of my top 5 here is where we interviewed Larry Casilla from Ammo NYC on May 20th. Just
That's a good
for
one.
interesting interview. He and I mean this in the nicest way possible, his obsessiveness is fascinating because like I don't know if you remember the episode, but he talked about how he was working on the various car care and car cleaning materials and substances and stuff like that, and he was basically like figuring out the chemistry himself to get like exactly what he wanted and do it exactly the way he wanted, and then eventually like started selling that stuff. And he talked about how like he details cars to relax. Like I think he said after he was going to get done with us, he was going to go clean a car, not like for work, not because like oh, I need to make some money tonight. It was like, I need to relax, I'm going to go clean my car. And it's just fascinating to see that amount of passion. And again, I mean it in the nicest way possible, that amount of like obsessiveness from someone that cleaning a car brings him relaxation and joy. And so it was a really interesting interview and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I mean, for me, if it's not something that I like have to do, if it's not something that's, oh man, I'm going to a car show, I've got to get this, it, I'm totally there. I can just take a couple hours, do some detail work, clean up. It's I mean, there's the physical aspect. Okay, you're getting a little bit of a workout, but yeah, I mean, it's soothing, it's relaxing. I am totally with him on that. You make a great point, Bruce, that he wasn't satisfied with the products that he was coming across.
Right.
So he took the time to develop his own. I mean, I don't think you can overstate that. When you find somebody like that that is willing to go to those lengths, and when you watch his videos and you see the work that he does,
Hmm.
I mean, it's he has some of the best, before and after car videos on the internet as far as I'm concerned. When you see some of the things that came in before and then after. I mean, I've done a fair amount of detailing in my day, and I've had some people say, "Wow, is this the same car?" But it's like he's on just a completely different level.
Right. And he
Um,
had
definitely go check out some of his videos.
Yeah. So like his Lamborghini Countach one where he goes through and he's measuring the paint and all of the paint is different thicknesses and he's like, I know why it's like this. It's because they painted these pieces by hand and so it wasn't a machine applying the paint and it's all uniform. There was one guy painted the door and maybe, he went to lunch and then he painted the other door, things like that. Or I think it was a 35. I think it was a 35 Plymouth, might have been a little bit earlier that he restored, and he was talking about how the interior materials are nothing like what's available today. So he had to throw out all of his usual methods and do something completely different because, using modern methods to clean a car that's that old, it just would have destroyed everything. But he has such a amount of experience and knowledge that he knew exactly what to do. He's like, okay, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to, do it this completely different way, and the result is still amazing.
Right. No, great. That was a great episode, a great guest. Um, I, we should take a moment here before I jump over to mine and just thank all of the guests that we had on
Of
through
course.
2022, because I mean, 2021, when we started the podcast, I mean, we had occasional guests. 2022, we worked much harder to
Mhm.
try to bring some interesting guests to the podcast. Of course, John Fry that I mentioned, he was with us way back. What is that, episode 56, when we were talking with him on his sci-fi designs, car designer, car artist. Definitely go check that out, episode 56. Michael Schaefer, automotive photography, that was back episode 70. I learned quite a bit about just getting some good automotive photos from there.
Mhm.
I mean, who am I missing? Matt Edmonds from Tire Rack was with us. That was a great episode. Jason Marker, editor in chief of Ride Apart, joining us to talk about his cross country trip in his motorcycle, in his
And
Euro
his
that he
Ural.
bought,
Yeah.
that he bought literally on the West Coast, and then spent like 2.5 weeks riding it with the sidecar from there back to his home in Michigan. So many great guests. I want to thank each and every one of you for being on the show.
Mhm.
I hope all of you at some point can come back.
Totally.
Um, I'm going to close out my number 5 with after all of that, an episode that we didn't have a guest on.
That's fine.
It's episode 87.
Okay. Which
And
one's that?
it's not so much the cars we were talking about, but it was just kind of geeking out with some pop culture stuff with cool car
Oh
movies.
yeah, that was so much fun. Yeah.
Now, I mean, we also did have the Honda Civic Type R that had just recently debuted. That was kind of a big deal. The Dodge Charger Super B we were also talking about on that episode. But then we were talking about cool car movies, and we did that right around Labor Day as sort of a thing. Hey, long weekend, if you're just looking for something to relax, enjoy some good car content, we were talking about some of our car movies. And I'm a big pop culture guy,
Same.
and Bruce, I know you are as well. And we have different areas of expertise. And I mean, I certainly picked up a few things from you on that episode as far as some of the cool car movies. I mean, what do you remember that episode?
Vaguely. So in my mind, I am combining that with our horror movie car episode that came in October. Um, because I remember that we talked about Christine on that one. We talked about
Yep.
Maximum Overdrive. I had to go back. We talked about Cannonball Run and Smokey and the Bandit on this one. Um, yeah,
Well,
I
no,
love
that was the point. We
right.
had to find movies that weren't his main
Oh, that's
stream.
right. That's right. Okay, I
So
apologize. Yeah,
it was sort of like the obscure car movie challenge. And I think I brought up, well, I know I brought up The Wraith because I think that's one of
you
the
did.
best,
I remember that.
that might be the best B movie car film of all time. Um and I, if I remember correctly,
I can't remember what I
I
brought
think you
up.
touched on Vanishing Point.
I probably brought up that seems accurate.
Mhm.
I can't remember what I brought up, to be honest with you. I, for whatever reason, I remember the one from October more, probably because horror movies are a bit more my thing.
Yep.
And I know I talked about Maximum Overdrive. I know I talked about Christine. I'm pretty sure I talked about Panic in Year Zero. Just
Yep.
for a bit more come to mind. I probably talked about Duel. Um, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so yeah, for whatever reason, that one comes to mind more quickly for me. But I I think I avoided talking about Two Lane Blacktop because I thought it was going to be too nerdy. I think I mentioned it though. I
You
can't
did
remember
mention
which
it.
I can't remember which ones I chose though for that. So I will
I
actually have to go back and see.
Yeah, go back and watch it. Episode 87, that went up on September 2nd, 2022. Of course, all of our episodes are on Spotify and Apple and Google and like a dozen other streaming platforms.
They
And they're
are
all
indeed.
on our Motor One podcast YouTube channel where
Yep.
everybody can go back and watch. And yeah, as we're recording now, this is episode 104. So
Right. This
you
is
have
our
a lot of
2 year
listening to do
anniversary.
over the holidays, Ramblers.
Yeah. I think so. Peek behind the curtain, and Smith has been hiding it well, but he's got a bit of a cough, so this is going to be slightly,
Just a
uh,
little.
just a little bit, so that, but to save his voice, so he can, you know, enjoy his time with his wife and his family. We're not going to go over too much on this one, but I do have to thank everyone. Like I said, this is episode 104, which means we have been doing the show for 2 years now, and that's really special. That's really cool. We haven't missed a week. Um, and I don't expect us to in the future, but I'm looking forward to a new year. I think tentatively the plan for our next episode is to, since this one we kind of look back, the next one is kind of maybe going to be looking forward and what we're looking forward to in 2030 or 2033, 2023.
23. Let's
Um,
slow down there, Bruce. Let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. Well, I'm
exactly.
not ready to go full self-driving just yet here.
But yeah, as always, it's fun. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope,
Happy New Year
have a
2023.
safe, happy New Year. Enjoy watching the ball drop or whatever it is where you live. But yeah, we appreciate you. We appreciate that you listen. As always, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. We hope you're listening. I hope you're listening in the car. I hope you're listening at home or just wherever. I appreciate it. But yeah, that's going to do it for episode 104. And have a good one, everybody.
We'll see you next year. Bye-bye.